Now, for a guy who loves The Sopranos and has made so many videos analysing minute details about the show, and as someone who's reviewed many TV shows on the channel, you might be surprised to know that I've never reviewed The Sopranos. For all you know, I might hate the show. I can't quite see how a review of the show or a breakdown of each season could really do this series justice, because each video would be like 6 hours long. But one request I've gotten a few times from subscribers is to do a breakdown of each episode of the show, one by one. It's not something I've ever really seriously thought about doing. For one, I think it's quite restrictive because you're having to limit your discussion to a single episode when character arcs and storylines span entire seasons in The Sopranos. Sure, the show is a lot more episodic than you might think. Many characters and plots last only for a single episode, but I always felt like doing an episode by episode analysis would force me to self-censor. Take for example Carlo betraying the family. He does so because his son gets done for drugs, but there is an undercurrent throughout the show of Carlo losing faith in Tony's leadership. Tony telling Carlo to suck cock when he knew how vehemently he was against Vito's chap-swearing shenanigans. Tony saying fuck all that honor and loyalty shit after Carlo praises Bobby. Things like that. In which episode video, if you were to do a breakdown per episode, would you put this analysis? Because it all happens over the course of a couple of 3 episodes. It's far more accessible to not limit yourself to just talking about a single episode. There's also the fact that I release pretty much one video a week, interchanging the topic between the likes of The Sopranos, The Wire, and other shows and movies. If I were to do one episode breakdown a month, which I'm not even sure I could commit to that given how much work is involved, there's 86 episodes, meaning even if I use the technique of positive visualization, it will take 1.5 years at least for me to carry this out, even with computers. However, the people have spoken, so I thought I'd give it a go with this video being a test run of sorts. If it all goes well, if you guys enjoy this format, I'll keep it going, and I plan to call it The Sopranos, The Genius of episode title. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below, and be sure to subscribe to the channel. One of the main sources I will be drawing from is the excellent book The Sopranos Sessions by Alan Sepinwall, which also is split episode by episode, which was a big help. Because the pilot is kind of its own thing, I thought I'd start with the second episode of the show, 46 Long. Here we go, memory lane. In many ways, 46 Long is the true start of the show. The pilot was shot in 1997 as proof of concept, and if the network didn't pick it up, Chase would have shot a few more scenes and released it as a movie. This episode, however, was produced in 1998 as part of a full season package. The series was still finding its feet, of course, and it would be for the entire season, but some of the more cinematic techniques from the first episode, which feel a little kooky in hindsight, are either toned down or gone, like the Dutch angles, extravagant steadicam shots, smash cuts, extreme close-ups, Tony's voiceover, Carmela confronting Meadow with an AK-47, and Tony beating a man in public. 46 Long feels a little more settled. There's been rejigging with the show, essentially ignoring slightly awkward facts like the pilot treating Tony as the boss of Jersey and that he and Sylvia were not that close, whereas now they're practically best friends. And Tony's cancer-ridden friend Jackie is now instead acting boss, whilst a forever unseen boss, Urkel DiMeo, is and remains in prison. But you still do get a lot of stuff you'd never have in later seasons, like Tony throwing Brendan out of his office like a rag doll, like Uncle Phil used to do to Will's friend in Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. But these are warm moments that I think, rather than look back with cringe, Sopranos fans embrace. It's part of the charm of the earlier seasons. There's a colourful 1990s and early 2000s fuzzy feel early episodes of the show have. One key Sopranos essential that is established is Melfi's office as a mainstay for the Sopranos series going forward. In the pilot, if anything, it was a vehicle for Tony's narration, as we cut from his sanitized explanations to Melfi to what was actually going on, like how the first session is a framing device to tell the story of Tony beating the degenerate gambler. From here on in, however, the therapy scenes were very much their own thing and one of the most important aspects of the show. Story-wise, in this episode, Chrissy and Brendan steal trucks incurring the fury of Uncle Junior, Tony sends Big Puss and Paulie to recover AJ's teacher's stolen car, and Tony's worried about his mother's ability to live alone and wants her in a retirement community. You do get a sense that Chase is trying to work out what tone he wants from his show with this episode, as if to drive home the idea, which will become more apparent as the show goes on, that The Sopranos is not really a mafia show. The plot involving Pussy and Paulie tracking down the gay couple has most of the episode's comedic, goofy sitcom-like moments. The truck jacking plot is treated a bit more seriously, with it being a tool to amp up the tension between Tony and Junior, though we haven't yet got a sense of just how much danger the likes of Brendan and Chrissy are actually in. The real story of the episode, as it often is, has nothing to do with the mob, and instead focuses on Tony's mixed feelings about his mother. He fights with this idea that he's, as he says, supposed to take care of your mother, presenting Livia to Melfi as this beautiful innocent creature, but there is this internal unsaid feeling that he actually despises her, her negativity, this black cloud she carries around with her, her refusal to give her son any kind of victory or acknowledgement, like him buying CDs and a CD player for her. And in a later episode at Green Grove, he brings her favourite dessert, which she refuses, and when he's about to leave with the food, she tells him to leave some for the loonies. He knows she'll eat them. We know it, she knows it, but in her narcissism, she can't acknowledge it to her son. This shield Tony has that cloaks his real feelings towards his mother are emphasized by his lie to Melfi, where he tells her Carmela won't allow Livia to live with them, but we see that Carmela actually asks Livia in this episode, and it appears this wasn't the first time. No doubt, it's Tony who is ensuring his mother does not darken the Sopranos' home with her constant presence. That's dicked up. 46 Long is unique in that it's the only episode in the series that has a cold open. Whether this was to give it thematic significance or whether this was simply because they were still experimenting at this stage, we don't know. But it does have significance because of both its placement and its content. Tony is at his most comfortable here. He's in the Bing, he's surrounded by the guys. Chris is lifting 2 kg weights, Puss is reading a magazine, they're counting money, watching TV. It's a quintessentially Sopranos mafia-esque setup, and worlds away from the ambiguous opening of the first episode, with Tony staring at that statue in Melfi's office and then forced to confront uncomfortable truths about his panic attack. Here he's content, at home with his boys. The Sopranos never went for generic titles, and 46 Long is quite aloof as an episode title, with it taking a while to work out that it's in reference to a man's clothing size, more specifically Tony's size. But it's also related to the thematic elements this episode covers, which is the decline of the mafia, as bluntly stated in the opening. Tony started the show saying he feels like he came in at the end of the thing and the best is over, and the mafia expert on TV explains the reason. A disregard within the mob itself for the rules that served the old Don so well, with Tony remarking if the shoe fits, and him childishly flicking a rubber band at the TV. It just kind of emphasizes the TV man's point. An example of such disregard is Brendan jacking the truck even after Jackie made a ruling against it. Tony is incensed but allows himself to keep some of the stolen suits, looking for a size that's 46 long, no doubt, which shows that he himself is complicit in this disregard and ultimately the decline of the mob, that the metaphorical shoe that fits is actually a suit. Tony lectures Chris and Brendan about the rules and the codes, but brazenly breaks them in front of his underlings. Real lack of standards, his generation. The link between the opening with the decline of the mafia's ethics are explained, and the later scene where we see the decline of the mafia's ethics in action is driven home by the fact that both scenes contain Silvio's Al Pacino impression. Like the show wants you to know that these two scenes are connected. It wants you to think why. The lowly nature of today's mafia is perhaps best exemplified by a major episode storyline being 2 gangsters tracking down a teacher's car. Big Puss even expresses frustration saying, "I'm Rockford over here." And the storyline is a bit of a nitty-gritty, everyday, petty departure to the hijackings and tensions between family positions that is present in this episode. But the show would never forget the little moments of life, to paraphrase Tony's line at the end of season 1. Getting lost in the woods, throwing a chair at queer ghosts, gangsters gossiping like high school girls over the phone, and offering a doctor's note to prove you're not an ass muncher are not things you would expect to happen in a mob drama, but those are the things which separate the show from most other crime dramas. Looking at the cold open, one could perhaps take a meta look at it and see it as the Sopranos not just acknowledging that they are dealing with a lower class of criminals to the mob's heyday, but that they are a puny TV show following in the footsteps of the great mafia movies of old like Goodfellas and The Godfather. I mean, I don't know if Chase and Co were aware the best of mob movies would be over by the late 90s and that they were essentially making the last great piece of mafia media, but that opening sure has aged that much sweeter for it. As if to drive home this point that The Sopranos is trying to stand on the shoulders of giants, Tony has Silvio impersonate Al Pacino's famous line from The Godfather Part 3, "Just when I thought I was out, they pulled me back in." As if to acknowledge, we're just imitating what came before. Even the line itself has a beautiful quality to it, as if it's speaking from a mafia movie fan's point of view, in that, just when I thought the age of mob movies was over, The Sopranos pulls me right back in. Technology and corporatism play a role in this episode, and the mob's existence in an age of surveillance, DNA, legalization of former lucrative rackets like gambling, and gentrification of former local neighborhoods, of course, played a part in the mafia's decline. In the opening, the guys discuss sheep cloning, and they sound completely ignorant regarding it, like it's some alien concept. Georgie is unable to understand how to transfer calls on the telephone. Chris says technology comes to the Bing when he arrives with the DVD players, and the guys discuss the picture and sound quality differences with the new medium. Times are changing, and the guys are struggling to keep up. The mob's battles against big business would come up many times in the show later. Patsy's failed extortion of a Starbucks manager comes to mind. But the seeds are here. Paulie rants about the theft and bastardization of Italian culture and the confusing amount of options for a simple coffee. An employee tells Puss, "These stores are everywhere," and he replies, "Tell me about it." The mechanic he questions mistakenly refers to Starbucks as buttfucks, and the logo of the fictional store Puss gets a coffee from has a logo that looks like a toxic warning sign. David Chase is raging against the machine here, and Paulie gains a small victory against the corporate machine with the comedic theft of a coffee maker. In Tony's personal life, he is troubled by his mother and eventually moves her into Green Grove. When talking with Melfi, it's interesting, and rather sad, that the only positive memory he can conjure of her being happy is when the whole family was laughing when Tony's father would fall down the stairs, which of course would be recalled in a later episode when Tony falls, and it's one of the few times we see Olivia chuckle. Own the anger instead of displacing it is Milfy's advice to Tony, something he fails to do, initiating his first of many beatings of poor Georgie, taking out all of his frustration on him. Tony even says to Melfi that Olivia can't operate a telephone, as if his later beating of Georgie, who struggles with the telephone in this episode, is what he wants to do to Olivia. Very allegorical. Georgie is the show's reminder, as is the truck driver who is beaten up and the other driver who is mistakenly killed, that these are still gangsters we're dealing with, and innocent people suffer as a result of their actions. I've never done a video on Olivia, and to avoid the video becoming too long, we'll restrain ourselves here. But though she's reprehensible, I do have sympathy for her. If Melfi sat down with her and got her to crack, we might just find that in her own way, Livia is still mourning the death of her husband, who in her narcissistic way she would feel has abandoned her. Perhaps Livia's resentment of Tony, Johnny Boy's replacement, stems from the fact that in her mind he is now also abandoning her. Thus, perhaps Livia running over her best friend with abundant intentionality is her lashing out the same way Tony lashes out against Georgie. And Tony, too, we'd see in Season 2, was just as capable of murder against a best friend. Just a few small things worth mentioning about this episode. Tony said about the boss position, in this day and age, who wants the job? And we cut to Mr. Magoo looking uneasy, as if he wants to say, "Me, I want the damn job." At Livia's house, Tony is eating a Virginia ham, which links to Junior's line in Season 2 where he says, "She's like a woman with a Virginia ham under her arm, crying the blues because she has no bread." Martin Scorsese did not have a cameo in this episode, as some mistakenly think. It was just a really good lookalike. And interestingly, as we discussed in another video, Scorsese couldn't actually get into The Sopranos. Chase wanted to use different songs to open each episode, but HBO refused, so it's this episode that really establishes "Woke Up This Morning" as the show's title song. Livia's friend, who she runs over, is the same woman who appears during Livia's funeral and says she was her best friend, and she's still in a wheelchair from Livia hitting her with the car, which says much about Livia's nature, if Livia being your best friend means she can put you in a wheelchair. So there you have it. What do you make of 46 Long? And is an episode by episode analysis something you want to see on the channel? Let me know in the comments section below. Subscribe to the channel, and thanks for watching.